Federal Reserve. That's the problem that we have. And they're a bunch of Satanists. And they are bent on fulfilling biblical prophecies. These are man-made biblical prophecies being fulfilled because people are allowing them to be fulfilled. They're not doing anything about it. And it's come to where at some point, yes, the American people are probably going to have to do something. And be prepared. I can see something that I'm not going to get into, Tom. We talked earlier. But there, I see with what you brought forth in this breaking news on these dirty bombs, that it fits in with other things that they may be preparing to try to round up American people. So
well,
you better be prepared for that. And I will say that. Go ahead, Tom.
That's right, and that's what the media is not reporting to you vis-a-vis the New York City arrest and the arrest in Denver, Colorado. In all probability, when these people were arrested, these cells that were active were were identified. That's why there was a split between the New York City Police Department and the FBI on what was to be done with these people. Now, these people have very little to do and with the terrorists that are running around with suitcase bombs. They were tape recorded or under surveillance, basically discussing or talking to individuals, third-party individuals that may have knew their existence. In fact, I can report to you tonight some of these individuals were actually FBI informants of themselves. This terrorism is created. It is not. It's scripted. It's not. These aren't real terrorists. These are cowboys. These people are basically bought and paid for, rent-a-terrorists, trade-a-terrorists.
Rent-a-terrorists, the old BCCI crowd, the old Iran-Contra crowd, it went on to become, quote-unquote, Al-Qaeda, and it's always the same stooges running, George Herbert Walker Bush and gang against the American people.
Now, the proliferation of nuclear material that has been taken out of the United States and sent on to Israel vis-a-vis Red China and Pakistan, this was part of the overall operation linked to these alleged rent-a-terrorists. It's an overall, you look at these pirates, Somalian pirates, these are all offshoots of the corporation, the shadow corporation, which controls this country, which basically has ransacked it, looted it, basically left us defenseless now, as I'm reporting to you tonight. This is the treason and criminality that has taken place on American soil. Now, you look at just recent activities. I don't want to get into it too much. Last Friday, the British and the Queen, who are broke and desperate, try to loot our country. With the assistance of Bush, J.P. Morgan, Mitt Romney, Charles Schumer, they were going to take money, launder money. They brought some money in, a few trillion in from the Caymans into J.P. Morgan, parked them in custodial accounts tied to Osama bin Laden, and then tried to move it through the Federal Reserve and pay commissions to the individuals mentioned. Bush, Schumer, Bernanke, Greenspan, and Geithner, and thanks to naval intelligence, and to a large extent the work of French intelligence, who was cooperating with ONI, or individuals tied to ONI, well, to ONI, not the majority, a large percentage of naval intelligence, those accounts were frozen, and that money was not able to be moved through the Federal Reserve. This is how they operate, folks. They go back and forth, running this money in and out of the country on occasion. But this was an effort basically to pay people under the table a lot of U.S. taxpayers' money and relieve the financial problems of the Queen of England at the U.S. taxpayers' expense. And again, people have my blog. You can go up there and read the story. And it's http://blogs.myspace.com/Tom / let me give that to you again here.
Here's the simpler way, and they can do it. Just go to stewwebb.com, click down to breaking news, open up Tom's last posting. I do not have his very last posted. I can't get into it. It deals with computer stuff. It deals with server things. It'll be probably up tomorrow. So we'll leave it at that. But if you want to get to Tom's site, go ahead, Tom.
http://blogs.myspace.com/Tom_Hennigan_Intel. Now, you can read that tonight, folks, and you'll get an idea of what kind of crap these people are involved in. Guide near the whole bunch. It's just beyond belief, and I'm trying to bring as much as I can. And now the reason we mention the role of naval intelligence is because people should remember the day the Pentagon was bombed, was hit with the missile on 9/11. It was a major office of naval intelligence that was hit. You remember that, don't you, Stu?
Yeah, it was.
Now, naval intelligence has had a split in it for years. But I believe now the majority of ONI is on the good guys' side and against the bad guys. I mean, they've done these things on occasion where ONI has risen up and tried to do something. But this time they may be successful. In the 70s, they basically, I believe, were possibly behind attempts on Gerald Ford's life at that point to send him a message concerning his cover-up of the assassination of President Kennedy. The Warren Commission stooge, who was placed in office by Richard Nixon.
Yes.
And then ONI, of course, was able to get Jimmy Carter elected president in 76, who was a former naval intelligence officer. And, of course, Jimmy Carter was brought down to a large extent by the Bush crime family, who went as far to help shoot down American aircraft that were out to rescue the hostages. You remember that, Stu?
Oh, yeah, that was all designed by Bush, and it can be proven.
And of course, so you see, I just thought I'd give you a little background on the role of naval intelligence and what it may be up to. You remember John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, was a naval officer too.
There has been a bad segment of Office of Naval Intelligence, for the edification of the listeners, that George Herbert Walker Bush is tied to. And
Right.
It comes back to Bobby Inman is one of them. Zumwalt, Inman, those.
Inman is a dangerous person. He is one of the command and control people when it comes to these terrorist groups on American soil. But you talk about that split in naval intelligence, one of the rat finks who have spied on the good side of naval intelligence for years is none other than Bob Woodward of the Washington Post, who himself was a naval intelligence officer too.
Of course, he was Bob Woodward. His claim to fame is what was it? The FBI, Richard Nixon. What they call him, deep throat. Yes.
Well, Woodward was the point man in the Watergate operation, which was able to remove Richard Nixon from office. Richard Nixon had been tied to various mafiosos and elements on the periphery that were elements that were tied to the assassination of President Kennedy. I am not going to accuse the late Richard Nixon of knowing of the plot to assassinate President Kennedy. I do believe, though, Richard Nixon was surrounded by individuals who directly were involved in the assassination of President Kennedy, including George Herbert Walker Bush, who eventually became CIA director under Gerald Ford.
Who was also ambassador to China there for a period of time underneath Nixon.
A large group of individuals inside ONI had decided to tape Richard Nixon from day one to monitor him in the White House. One of the reasons Nixon put in his own taping system, this has never really been reported, was to try to catch ONI and taping him. It was more sophisticated than ever reported by the media. But Nixon was using a lot of information he had on people he knew and even worked for who weren't cooperating with Nixon in some of his agenda, to use that as blackmail the force